on this edition of the Booth Review. Everybody, keep your composure. It's just one game.
And I'll be breaking down what I saw from the defense against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
And Jaden Daniels' debut, not too bad. The internal clock, when it slows down, watch out. It's going to become a really good quarterback.
And I got a giant take for you. Get it? Giant take.
Me in London. Big Fletch starts right now. Booth Review. Welcome into the first regular season edition of the Booth Review. I'm Bram Weinstein, voice of the Commanders, with my partner in the booth, the one and only number 2 all-time in career tackles in NFL history, London Fletcher, 2,039. We could have used a few of those against Tampa Bay, London.
Yeah, you're right. Hey, Bram, you forgot to introduce me as Big Fletch, man. What are we talking about?
I heard it's multiple personalities. You're London right now. Unless you're Big Fletch already, I'm Big Bram right now. I just got off of a flight from Fort Lauderdale, sitting in the middle seat. So, and if you're wondering, if you know the state of Florida, why did you fly from Fort Lauderdale? That's the rest of the story I don't feel like telling. So you think yesterday was bad.
You told me
today was worse.
About the travel entails. Yeah, that's awful. Sitting in the middle seat. That's I've always select my seat. As a bigger guy, one thing I gotta have a window seat. I don't even want to sit on the aisle, because if I'm coming down, if I'm in the aisle and they're coming down with the tray, I usually get bumped, and that's just awful to me. And I love to sleep on the planes. So I feel for you. Window seat for me. But yeah, I'm ready to rock and roll, not the start we wanted, but hey, the sun still came out, and there will be football played again this Sunday.
All right, let me just start with the overarching theme. Well, I want to go through the game with you, but the overarching theme of it's one game, right? There's just no chance that in your career you didn't have one of these. So, help us out here a little bit. This doesn't mean it's the end of the world, right? Because you've lived through something like this before.
Absolutely. I've had my more than my fair share of 0-1 starts, even 0-2 starts in my career. And I think about back to 2012 season. We started that season like 4-6. 4-6, and then at one point, you're like, hey, Coach Shanahan tells the media, hey, we're gonna be evaluating everybody, and the media thought he was getting thrown in the towel and, kind of looking forward to next season. But it actually kind of lit a fire under a lot of us and said, hey, it's time to really step up our game. You all know how that 2012 season ended. We go on a 6-game win streak, playing Dallas, last game of the season, Sunday Night Football, for the division championship, division crown at FedEx back then. Win that game, win the division, end up hosting a playoff game. So don't panic. It's just one game. And even, I will say this, even on the flip side, had we won that game, you still can't get too high and be all of a sudden like, hey, we're bound for the Super Bowl. It's a long season. There's a lot of football left to be played. I've already broken down and watched the offense completely through. I'm more than halfway through the defense, and I'll go back and see it several more times. And I tell you this, I came away from the game a little bit more encouraged from an offensive standpoint and even from a defensive standpoint, because, and Jaden Daniels mentioned this when you and I interviewed him after the game. He talked about we left a lot of things out there.
Yeah.
And when you go back and see it, Bram, he's true. That was absolutely correct. There were a lot of plays left on that field in Tampa Bay. They'll get those things corrected defensively. It's not a pick fix type thing that we got to go through. I'm encouraged, man. I'm still on board.
Jaden's least of my worries, actually. I'm going to go through the offense with you. He's least of my worries after what happened yesterday. There's other things that are more concerning. I wanted to give you one story from when I covered the team, and this is like 20-something years ago. Marty Schottenheimer came here. It started 0-5, okay? 0-5. The scores were terrible, right? They were getting blown out. It looked terrible. It was very similar in messaging to what we're getting with Dan Quinn right now, in that you're going to like the way we play. It's going to be very physical. We're going to be very tough. And the first 5 games went completely sideways, and it completely flipped in the middle of the season, and they ended up going 8-3. And honestly, if you ask anybody that covered the team at the time, one of the big mistakes the previous owner made was firing Marty Schottenheimer after that first year, because it looked like it was going in a very different direction. So I've seen this before too, not obviously from your standpoint, but I've seen this before too in real time. One game doesn't mean anything. And the other thing I want to say about Tampa Bay, because they're a good example of this too, go look at their record in the first half of the season. They didn't actually turn around and become a playoff team last year until the middle of the season, and that's when and Green Bay's another good example of it, that took off, and they're in this kind of launching pad place. They got their whole team back off of a playoff season. So we're in two different spaces here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think part of kind of we have to understand there was so much excitement about this offseason, bringing in Dan Quinn, the new ownership group finally having a full kind of offseason to put things together, hiring Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, getting the free agents we brought in, the drafting Jaden Daniels. So there was a tremendous amount of excitement and anticipation. You saw all the Commanders fans in Tampa Bay, man. It was a beautiful thing seeing all of our fans that made that trip. Some of them, flew from I met one fan, he flew as far as he came from the UK.
Wales. Wales.
Yeah, as we were leaving. So we had fans from all over the world that came to see us play. And we would have loved to gotten off to a better start and won that game just to continue that excitement. But again, after looking at the tape, I'm still encouraged, and I feel like we will get and be the type of team we want to be.
So Tampa reminds me a little bit of what Detroit was a year ago, where 2 years ago, Detroit had this new staff, new team, new chemistry, said it was going to turn a corner, did in that next year, 2023. Tampa feels similar to me, where they turned a corner in the middle of the season. Baker Mayfield, and whatever go-around this is for him, has really found himself. We'll talk about him in a minute. He was outstanding yesterday against the defense, and they are looking like the type of team that is heading up in that kind of upward trajectory. And it was strange, because like going into week one, I was trying to sell myself, like, or maybe you too, look, maybe this is the right time to catch them. They don't know what we're going to do. We could catch them off guard. They can't scout us. We haven't shown anything. At the same time, you go on the other side and you go, 44 of their 53 players were either drafted or undrafted free agents. That is a cohesive team. That's a team that Adam Peters and Dan Quinn want to have here in 2 years. They're ready to take off. And if Baker's going to play like that with the weapons that they have and the defensive scheme that they organized, again, they're dangerous. So as it turns out, it's another reason why I think everybody needs to chill out, calm down. Washington played a really good, high-level playoff team yesterday.
Right. A team that you've mentioned several times in leading up to this game. I mentioned multiple times. Playoff game. And went into Detroit and had a game in the fourth quarter. So I think Tampa doesn't really get the type of respect around the league that it probably deserves, especially if Baker plays like he played yesterday. I grew up in Cleveland. I remember Baker in Cleveland during those days. Man, that was the most impressive that I've seen. I was like, shoot, if he played like this in Cleveland, he would still be in Cleveland. But I could only imagine what it's like in DC, the sports talk radio, all the different fans in the sky is falling and all that type of thing, man. Especially when they talk, as we get into the conversation about defense. I mean, calm down, pump your brakes. We'll be fine.
Having lived in that world, still living in that world, I never take that, like, I get, like, it's hard, and it's hard to hear it sometimes, especially in the building here. You don't want to hear it. It's only proof of how engaged everybody is, though, how excited everybody is, and how much it matters to everybody, right? And I'm not trying to soft pedal it. That's the truth. Like, The real problem with sports is if you have ambivalence. That doesn't exist here. We saw it on the ground in Tampa. We've seen it here forever. Everybody cares, and they expected better. And when we do go through it, there are parts of this, and I think Dan Quinn would agree, that we all expected better and a different outcome. But I want to go back to the point of that's a very different team in a very different spot as they try to contend for a Super Bowl. This is a team that's very new. So do you think the newness, the coach, the GM, everything in and around the building, a very, very, very different roster, did you think that reared up against an experienced team yesterday?
Absolutely. It reared up, and where you can tell where you could, especially defensively, I should say, where you had 7 new guys, 7 new starters playing in a new scheme, where guys not necessarily playing the defense the way it was supposed to be played. And, it's in real time, I'm thinking I've kind of got a good feel of what I feel like the fit should be and the leverage should be. Fit should be in run support. Leverage should be from a coverage standpoint. And then once I go back and I was able to look at it, it confirmed what I thought. And, there was some run fit guys not being exactly where they need to be, and some leverage thing, guys not playing to those leverages. And a lot of that is just the newness and also getting used to being on the field together from a communication standpoint. Especially on the back end from a secondary standpoint, there has to be high level of communication. So the newness of that, maybe some of the concepts and things that Tampa presented to them, that could have been the first time they've had this type of concept, route and switch routes and things like that. So working through those things, definitely there was a newness to that. I think about some of the plays on offense where, I don't know what Jaden's primary read was on some things, but if he looks to, maybe there was a bunch play on a 3rd and 3, he opted to go to a hitch to Olamide Zaccheaus, and Olamide may have been his primary target, primary read, but if he goes to the left side where the bunch combination is, he has Luke McCaffrey wide open for an easy first down conversion. Again, I don't know if the pre-snap read and everything told Jaden to go to Olamide Zaccheaus. The defensive back made a good play for a pass breakup, but going back, they may say, "Hey, we got a guy wide open on this other side." So it's things like that, newness of a system. That's why I'm not discouraged at all by looking at this.
All right, let me get into the other big picture thing, which is Quinn has talked about often. You're gonna like the way we play. You're going to like the energy we bring. You're going to like how we get down. They say this type of stuff. In reviewing, in real time, and you see the score, and they just can't stop them. It doesn't feel like that's happening. When you rewatched it, do you feel like the energy that he's talking about was there, and there were missed assignments and missed tackles, which we can go through? Or do you think that this needs to ramp up to the level that he and Joe Witt are trying to preach and talk about here?
There were spurts of it. There were times where guys were flying to the football, getting around the pursuit was what you would like. There were spurts of it and glimpses of it, but it wasn't consistent enough. It wasn't, to the level to be. I don't know how much that he may have played into this or whatever the case may be, but it wasn't to the level that Dan Quinn wants it to be. And then also, just the attention to detail, that wasn't at the level that I know Joe Witt Jr. preaches. I know Dan Quinn preaches. I know all those defense of coaches preaches. The attention to detail wasn't at the level that they wanted to be.
All right, I want to go through the defense in a second, but I want to read you one thing about their schedule and just see how you react to this, because everybody's hurting around here, as you mentioned. Don't listen to sports talk radio. It's not going to be pretty. Right? It's not going to be pretty today. It's not what everybody's all excited. We were ready to get shot out of the cannon out of Tampa. We were ready to go. It didn't happen. This is their schedule the next 7 weeks. Giants at home, at Cincinnati, at Arizona, Cleveland at home, at Baltimore, Carolina at home, Bears at home. None of those teams, until you get to Chicago, won yesterday. None of them. So as we stand right now, you got to get to week 8 to play a team with a winning record. So they're all sitting around thinking the same thing we are. And Chicago, They had a debut of their number 1 overall pick quarterback. He didn't even throw for 100 yards. They needed a blocked punt and a pick 6 to knock off Tennessee at home. So there's a lot of teams out there that are sitting there wondering the same thing today like Washington is.
Hey, man, half of the league, and we still, got the Monday night game to come up, but half the league lost, half the team will win after tonight. And, you're going to have half the league happy and the rest of us feeling like we feel in Washington. So, again, what I said, even if we had won this game, you can't get all of a sudden feel like you have arrived, because you still have things that, even in wins, that you have to correct. You got to tune up. You got to stick to the process and the plan. So pump the brakes. And I don't know why any current player would even listen to sports talk radio. I was oblivious. I thought they loved me all the time. Either good or bad. I don't listen to sports talk radio. Don't get on social media. Don't press. Don't read the reviews. There's no purpose. It serves no purpose to you.
All right, let's go through the defense, special teams, and the offense. I want to start on the defensive side of the ball. You've mentioned a couple of the players and a couple of the plays that occurred. I want to bring up what I think was maybe one of the most disappointing parts of the whole game, which was the tackling overall, and largely, like, when everyone says the whole offseason, where's the pass rush going to come from? They could add 5 or 6 sacks had they finished plays on Baker Mayfield, and they didn't. So I want to give Mayfield credit here. They had shots at him. They couldn't finish the plays. How would everybody feel today if Washington had posted 5, 6 sacks, got them to punt 5, 6 times? Because that, to me, is the difference in the game. They did not finish plays, and the tackling was surprising to me.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about it, finishing plays, especially finishing sacks.
I know we want to get by Tampa, but like I want to point out a couple things that, as we were getting prepared to do the game yesterday, there were stats about Baker Mayfield that are striking. And last year, under pressure, he had the 2nd most pass yards and the 3rd best passer rating. So if you let him escape, if there was going to be a carryover, if you let him escape, you were going to be in trouble with him. I know people don't think of him that way, but that's what he became last year down there. People have this perception of him. He is not unlike Jared Goff, I think, did over the last couple of years in Detroit with the way that he's played, where people had a perception of him that he's this level of quarterback. Suddenly he's winning with this new team and performing pretty well. People look differently. This is happening with Mayfield. Like, we came into this year and people don't think a lot of him. He's a former number 1 overall pick. He's a former Heisman Trophy winner. And if you go look at the advanced stats of him a year ago, that wasn't a fluke that they ended up turning their season around that way. I knew this was going to be a problem if they didn't get a pass rush on him or they didn't bring him down when they had the opportunity, because he had become a very, very prolific passer under pressure if you don't get him down, and it happened yesterday.
Yeah, it did. And I'll say this. Baker, he played extremely well yesterday, but he's also on his 4th team, in 6th season or whatever it is for him. So, and then you think about Tampa, they signed him to a 3-year contract, $100 million contract, and we're talking about $33 million per year. That's a bargain compared to, you think
Look
about
what Dak got.
Yeah. And you and I, actually, we talked about that last night. He's making about half of what Dak is. I don't know. I think Tampa still wanted to see more from him, and they kind of felt the same way that the rest of the league did as well. Because if they knew he was the guy and they really thought he was the guy, they would have signed him to a much bigger contract for a lot more years. But with that being said, the offense that he's in, I think even suits his skill set even better than the one he played in a year ago under Dave Canales. This offense that Liam Cohen brought, he coached under Sean McVay, and all the different things, the way that they, quick pre-snap motions, the quick motions, the screens, the play-action passes, he's going to thrive in this type of offense. And when you look at the weapons he has at receivers, and then Rachaad White, man, they got some dudes over there in Tampa Bay. So this is a great situation for Baker. If he continues to play like this, man, watch out for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
I think this too. Like, I look at the NFC this year, and I don't see some kind of behemoth. Like, I think the 49ers could be very, very good. I think the Eagles could be very, very good. I think the Rams could be good. I think Detroit could be really good. I think Green Bay, if Jordan Love is not injured for any period of time, could be very good. But I don't see any of them like the Chiefs or the Ravens, where you go, you got to beat them to get there. And Tampa's dangerous. They are very dangerous, especially if he's going to play at that level. And then we got flagged before the game. Watch out for this rookie receiver, Jalen McMillan, going alongside Evans and Godwin. And boy, did he show up yesterday. So they've got a full arsenal. I agree. Rachaad White's very good, versatile player. They've spent a lot of assets on their offensive line. They don't need Baker Mayfield to be Lamar Jackson or Pat Mahomes to be very successful, and they showed that yesterday. But on our side of it, at the same time, if you tackle the guy, I don't think you have this outcome. Totally different. Yeah, you don't have this outcome.
We feel totally different because those sacks are momentum shifts. They put him in not just he made a couple plays on third downs, but even if it's a first down sack or a second down sack, it just puts him in a lot longer down a distance to try to convert. So and those things energize your team, energize your defense. So, they didn't finish the deal. I'm sure they're kicking themselves, but I still feel like we'll be okay, especially when we talked about the tackling piece.
I really feel this is one of the things, and I'm going to get to the next one that I think will change pretty quickly, that I'm not actually that concerned about. Like, that's a very good – Bobby Wagner's a first-ballot Hall of Famer. Like, Jeremy Chinn's a very good safety, tackling safety. We learned that Quan is a very, very good tackling safety. Like, Allen and Payne, like – I think this will change. And I'm not concerned about that. I think it was a bad first outing for them, but I don't think it's reflective of the talent that they have. And therefore, that part of the chill out, don't worry about it for me is I don't see that happen. And considering this is the core tenet of what Quinn and Witt talk about constantly, that's going to change. I believe it.
Yeah, it's going to change. And again, I've gotten through the majority of the defensive footage. The tackling, it was an issue in terms of obviously some big plays from a couple of communication things from a coverage standpoint, not playing with the right leverage, things like that affected them, those type of things. But there's a situation where we also end up bringing a lot more five-man rushes, maybe than Joe Witt probably would want to, looking back or maybe even looking forward. Hey, let's see if we can just rush four and play a little bit more coverage on the back end, things like that. So there'll be things that you learn. They learn from this defense, learn from this game and say, okay, these are some of the things we could do differently. Let's work on these things in practice. We know the New York Giants would try to take advantage of some of the things that we didn't do correctly and do well enough on Sunday's ball game. So I'm good. I'm not too concerned.
So let me talk about one other thing that occurred. And so on the McMillan touchdown in the second half, Baker changed into that play. Okay. Baker changed into that one. So the communication, obviously they've talked about, wasn't where they wanted to be. It was breaking down first go together. And at the same time, Baker walked up to the line and said, I know what I got, and he went right to it. So there's an element of, and this is, again, early for everybody, whole new team, whole new coaching staff, everybody's getting on the same page. The element of disguising what they're doing clearly is going to be part of what we're going to be talking about moving forward, too.
Yeah, they knew it was a five-man pressure. I can't remember who was the fifth rusher. He knew we were coming with a five-man pressure, and he kind of had an idea we might be playing man coverage on that. The route wasn't difficult to defend if you have the right type of communication. They ran a flat route, a kind of snag route with the tight end out of the backfield, so to speak, or out of the line of scrimmage, and then a 7. So we call it flat 7, flat snag 7. It's not a difficult route to defend if everybody's on the same page. He knew we were bringing pressure, five-man pressure. It was a five down line of scrimmage. So that part I'm not overly concerned with. Again, it's just a matter of guys being on the same page and saying, especially when you get two receivers that potentially you can communicate almost like, hey, in and out, or I'm locking my guy, or just whatever the communication is, whatever the lingo that they use within this defensive system. It's just a matter of getting it out, repping it out.
Do you look at personnel and get a little bit concerned at this point, or are you willing to kind of wash yourself of that, look at the matchup that they had and go, let's all calm down here and give these guys a chance?
I'm not concerned about the personnel. And the reason I'm not concerned about the personnel, because I can see if guys were just getting physically beat, like, man, we just don't have the guys that can cover these guys. They can't run with these guys. They're just physically overmatched. A lot of the breakdowns that happened on a coverage standpoint were not playing the proper leverage. And when I talk about leverage, and we talk about this a lot. So say we're in a defense and I'm supposed to have outside leverage, in this coverage. I was supposed to keep my body outside the receiver and kind of funnel him toward the middle of the field, so to speak. I may have safety help in the middle of the field or stuff like that. And when you lose your leverage, meaning if I let that receiver run outside of me, I've lost my leverage. I can't get beat to where I'm supposed to be strong. That happened on multiple occasions. So those are technique things. Those are attention to detail things. There was a situation where we're playing two-man. Two-man, you have to have inside man-to-man technique. You can't get beat inside. That happened. That happened in the game yesterday in critical situations. So these are technique details that happen. So these are not, hey, this guy doesn't have the skill set to do it. This is a guy not paying attention to detail for whatever reason or another, not going out and executing it.
All right, let's get into the offense here a little bit. I want to start with Jaden Daniels, who, for a first go, again, I think showed the elements that we've seen from him. I know in the end, he ended up running the ball more, not by design, obviously, than I think the team really intended. But I think he was getting used to the game speed of the NFL. And I don't know where you are on it, but for a debut, he's the last thing I'm actually worried about after what happened yesterday. I thought he kept his cool. I thought he stayed calm. He never put the ball in harm's way. I actually thought for a debut, I was very pleased with what he did.
Yeah, I was good. I was good with the way Jaden played, especially, and without his rushing, man, where would we have been on the offense? I thought his poise in the pocket and being able to find lanes and create on the run, things like that, I was extremely not pleasantly surprised, because that's what he does, but I was happy he did that. Glad he didn't take a hard hit, so to speak. Want to see him slide feet first, but hey, he'll get to that. But for an NFL debut, I think Jaden, he'll definitely be pleased with some things, but he'll also go back and look at the film and say, man, there was so much more I could have done, especially in the passing game. And me and my, not understand everything that they're trying to do from an offense standpoint. I saw multiple opportunities that were there in the passing game. If, maybe Jaden opted to take a chance on the ball downfield or instead of going to the right, maybe looking to the left and, things like that and hitting a hot route here or there. So there's so much more that he'll look at in that film. And I'm sure the coaches, they were talking about on the sideline, they'll be like, Jaden, man, it was some plays to be made in the passing game. I know he's, kicking himself about the missed deep ball shot to Terry at the start of the second half. I'm with you. Jaden's my least of concerns when it comes to, that game from yesterday.
Yeah, I walked out of that going, he didn't have these rookie moments where he's throwing the ball in the wrong place or putting it in harm's way or making really bad decisions. What I might think early, and I need to rewatch it because I haven't rewatched it yet like you have, that maybe the internal clock for him was moving a little faster than he would like early in the game, and he vacated a couple of plays out of the pocket maybe a little bit sooner than I think he will down the road. Like, it was his debut. It's a highly aggressive team. They're going to bring all these blitz packages, and on a couple of occasions, while he made plays with his legs and kept running for first downs and his instincts are great, I think looking back, he may say, I could slide and maybe give myself an extra beat. But that's an internal clock thing that I also feel like will just get better with time, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. There were some times where I thought considering all things considered, with the amount of five-man pressures that the Bucs did, or also some simulated pressures where they were able to kind of, create different rushers. I thought the offensive line, for the most part, and not just the offensive line, I think you got to go throw the tight ends and also the running backs, B-Rob and Austin Eckler. They were outstanding in blitz pickup. I mean, they were nailing running backs blitzing and safeties blitzing. But from a standpoint of you going to this game talking so much about the blitzing and the pressures that the Buccaneers are going to bring, so you may get a little bit hurried, so to speak. You even look at the first throw that he had, the sail that he threw to B-Rob, the backwards pass. Just maybe a little bit of nerves, just, settle down a little bit. Clock, it was a spacing route, and, there were other guys he probably could have went to with the ball down the field. But again, his NFL debut, all that type of stuff. I thought he settled down a little bit more as the game went on, kind of got comfortable, understood that, my guys are doing a really good job picking up these pressure packages for the most part.
We will head also into week 2, and we will literally not have had a full game with what appears to be the offensive line literally playing together. Because yesterday they wanted to ramp up Brandon Coleman and Cornelius Lucas.
And by the way, Brandon Coleman did a good job. He played really good.
I'm going to bring him up now because they rotated him. I think they felt like that he wasn't ready to take on the full bore of the playbook, having not played in the preseason at all. So they rotated him with Cornelius Lucas. And there were moments yesterday, I know there's not a ton of positives, but there were moments yesterday. Go watch on film him running downfield, and you'll start to see why they love this athleticism of his. And I'm not sure what the plan is here in the near term, but obviously they're very bullish about him potentially becoming the starting full-time left tackle when they think he's ready for it. Go watch some of the highlights of him running behind the play and how fast he actually is and what level of athlete he is, and you'll start to understand why I think they feel the way they feel about him.
Oh, yeah, there was one play, I think it was on one of Jaden's scrambles, and, I mean, he's running. It reminded me of Trent Williams running, like, man, this dude can run. And this was my first time actually getting the opportunity to see Brandon Coleman play. The practices that I was at, I didn't see him practice. He wasn't practicing. So I was wanting to see what he looks like as well. He looked really good in pass pro, really good on some in run blocking, double team blocking, getting up to on the second level, getting to linebackers. There was one pass pro, man, he just locked the dude up. So like the dude basically gave up because Brandon locked his hands on him, and he was just like, man, I'm done. But I think that was the right approach in terms of splitting time with him and Cornelius Lucas because he hadn't had, the reps necessary in the preseason. And don't forget, man, it was about 100 degrees down there in Tampa on that field. That humidity, you're not going to have a guy go from not taking a single snap in the preseason to all of a sudden, go ask him to play 60 to 70 snaps in that type of heat. That wouldn't be fair for anybody, let alone a rookie.
All right, other rule changes. The dynamic kickoff goes into effect for real. Tampa Bay punted on it. They barely gave us kickoff return. So I don't know that we learned much about Washington's kickoff return because they chose to just kick it out of the end zone multiple times. I feel like this change isn't punitive enough because the ball goes to the 30 when you do that. There's a lot of teams going, all right, well, I know you want us to give you returns, but we don't have to. So, and they've kind of gone in that direction and said we don't want to. So I don't think we saw a lot of what Washington's return game is going to look like.
No, but we did see who the returners are.
Yes.
They had Austin Eckler back there and also McNichols back there. So we got an idea, and they talked about the running back types being probably the guys who will be best suited to be those dynamic kickoff returners because it kind of almost ends up being a run play, so to speak. I would say this. Going back, instead of – if they wanted to get more returns, I felt they should have just moved the kicker back 5 yards, to kick off back another 5 yards, you would have gotten a lot more returns, and you could have kept things status quo in terms of you wouldn't have had to wait for the ball to be caught.
But they didn't want everybody. They didn't want everybody running full steam down the field because of the collisions, which is why they changed it in the first place. Because they don't want all the head injuries. That's why the players aren't lined up where they were.
Well, then put it out to the 35, like you said. It's not punitive enough if you're gonna kick it into the end zone. Especially one time the Bucs kicker, he kicked it out the back. I mean, it was past the white line. I mean, that's how far he kicked it. There was no doubt that he was kicking it out of that end zone.
I would like to describe what's happened this offseason, especially this summer and into the first week with the kicking situation here, as flatly unlucky. I mean, they've had professional kickers in here that they're missing. So, there's another change coming with that this week. And I'm not surprised. It wasn't even just the misses, kicking a kickoff out of bounds. Like, come on. Like, that can't happen.
They were trying, seemed like they were trying to pin the Bucs return into the corner. And, you got your kickoff coverage unit. Hey, we're going deep kick to the left, so to speak. And that means, hey, we're kicking it to the corner of the left side of the return to the field. And kicked it out of bounds, man. I don't know how much practice he has doing that. He's a young kid. It takes a skill to do that. So, the kicking situation, it's not ideal right now either for us.
No. All right, we have a new segment we're starting. It's called Hit Me With It with Big Fletch. We got a home opener coming. I don't know what the deal is with the Giants in recent years. We have a hard time beating that team, but it's a whole new world, obviously, now with everything changed here. So let's see what that rivalry looks like once we get out to Landover this weekend as they get, renew the rivalry. A lot of different faces that are part of it. So hit me with it. We got a home opener where, going back to sports radio, these guys are going to be hearing it this week that it is a must-win that they got to beat the Giants.
Oh, yeah. Well, here's hit me with it. Not only will we win, not only will the Commanders win, we will win convincingly against the New York Giants. And I know they've had our number, but it's a new day in the burgundy and gold. Dan Quinn will get his first win as the head coach of the Washington Commanders. Jaden Daniels will get his first win as a NFL starting quarterback against the New York Football Giants on Sunday. Mark it, book it. The burgundy and gold faithful, we will show up, and we will show up at our home opener at Northwest Stadium this Sunday.
Here's what I know, too, and this one's going to change. All these guys talk about energy, hitting, aggressiveness. You like how we get down, and turnovers. Ball is life. Ball is life. Ball is life. We didn't get one of those in Tampa. That's happening. That is happening on Sunday. That's happening.
It's going to be a frenzy. I can't wait to watch the party. That defense is going to be flying around, having fun. Offense is going to be humming. We're going to unleash hell on the New York Giants this Sunday.
So all these coaches always talk about this. A lot can change in a week. It's going to have to, right? For both New York and Washington, for that matter. It's going to happen for both of these teams. They're going to be talking about the same things in both locker rooms this week. Lots got to change. Explain to me how a lot can change in a week.
Well, a lot of things that took place in that ball game has to change, and greater attention to detail, fundamental football being a lot better, namely the tackling, sustaining some blocks better as well. Just understanding all the things that we did wrong are easily correctable. It's not where we need to go out and make wholesale changes. We need to blow up the roster, toss in, forget the rest of the season. But take greater attention to detail from a leverage standpoint in terms of coverage, a greater attention to detail, making sure you have your proper leverage, proper run fit gaps, all those types of things, better communication. So those things will change in a heartbeat, and it'll be harped on at a great deal during this practice week.
It's going to be an interesting matchup, too, for the offensive line. Again, the strength of the Giants' defense is their front. Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, who they just acquired. It's a very, very stout front. So they're going to get tested, and I think Jaden's going to have to make his way out of some pockets that may collapse here or there this weekend coming up.
Yeah, it'll New York Giants, man, I know they got a new defensive coordinator. Wink Martindale is no longer there, but it'll be challenged. They'll present their challenges like every defense in the National Football League does, week in and week out. But I'm sure there'll be a great game plan from an offensive standpoint of, hey, how to go out and attack these guys. There'll be a game plan, a real game worth of footage on the New York Giants defense, some of the things they do from a strength standpoint, weakness standpoint. And, let's see what they come up from a plan to attack those guys.
Here's what I've also learned. A lot could change in a week when you win. Everybody talks differently about literally everything when you win.
Man, everything is better when you win. I mean, the sun just seems like the day feels better, food tastes better. Man, your hair looks better, Bram. All types of things. You just feel a lot better about yourself.
Nothing wrong with my hair. I got a lot of issues with a lot of things. My hair looks fine.
Well, maybe my hair looks a little better.
All right, London. I'll see you on Sunday out in Landover. Can't wait for it. Commanders, Giants.
All right.